talk about Fat Princess, an early favorite, I think, for a lot of people in PlayStation All-Stars. What was the inspiration of putting her in the game?
She doesn't have that long lineage that some of these other characters have, but she has a really strong sort of diehard fan following.
She's pretty much the furthest thing from a fighting game character I could think of.
The game Fat Princess is really all about capture the flag, and Fat Princess is the flag. What you mostly do is play with these villagers and sort of leverage the villagers' strengths to capture the Fat Princess. And so we wanted to apply a similar strategy to our character Fat Princess in PlayStation All-Stars. And then the other part of Fat Princess is leveraging, that Hulk, knowing how to come crashing down on opponents or going for a long combo. And then she's really, really strong at getting close and doing a lot of damage to multiple enemies at the same time.
Tell me about what's a go-to move for you with Fat Princess?
I think a lot of players will use the air down triangle, which is sort of the butt bounce, where she sort of comes crashing down and does this really big air effect on characters. And also up triangle, which is kind of this rising pirouette, where she sort of spins in the air and catches everyone around her.
All about specials. Let's talk about those specials because she's got some of the best in the game that I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Her level 1 super starts out, again, one of her villagers, the wizard, summons a sort of a cake mirage. She'll come charging forward towards that cake, and anyone who stands in her way gets obliterated. It's really good, fast moving, covers a lot of range, and she can take out anyone.
Now her level 2 though, that's what I'm all about. That's the fat chicken, and what's funny is that's an Easter egg from Fat Princess.
She pulls out the chicken, actually one of her wizard villagers again transforms into a chicken, and Fat Princess climbs on top, and they go on a tear trying to get as many kills as possible. It's a really devastating super when you're in small range levels.
Luckily that level 3 super, that is a great fit for a larger level. She basically summons this chaotic maelstrom of all these villagers that just fills the screen with carnage.
It's a really good super. It doesn't require any sort of dexterous actions on her part. She just sort of sits down and enjoys a piece of cake.
Tell me, what kind of player would gravitate towards and best leverage Fat Princess?
Players who like doing big, hard-hitting attacks, who have a little bit of fun performing combos. If you like using assists, I know I'm a really big fan of games that have like helper systems or assist systems in them, and so we built that into her character as well. I think we'll have a really fun time with Fat Princess.
PlayStation.
Alright, so let's talk about Parappa the Rapper. That's a name I haven't heard in some time.
Parappa the Rapper, perhaps more than maybe any other character in the PlayStation universe, is the ones that the fans really seem to have a special appreciation and love for.
At a broad strategic level, what's the best way to use Parappa?
Parappa is an extremely short-range character, probably has the shortest range of any character in our game. When he is in close, he can perform devastating attacks, punches and kicks. It's all in the mind. Delivers a lot of really cool and interesting, devastating combos. And for the entire 3 minutes of a time match, he's just going to spend that entire time trying to get in close, do his great combos.
There's sort of a tap dance move he does where you can jump and push down and circle and just and just bash guys, batter them on the ground from above.
We call this his 1,000 kicks. So he's got 2 attacks that are basically the cornerstones. So the 1,000 kicks, Parappa will take an angle and sort of come in at a beeline. Once he's on top of you, he's really good at doing this. He can come straight down, deliver a bunch of sort of kicks all the way down your body. Really good at generating a fair amount of AP, but also knocks the opponent down right on top of Parappa, which is exactly where he wants to be. The 1,000 fists, much like it sounds, is a raining barrage of punches that Parappa executes.
Another move that's great for mobility and for hitting enemies is he has a skateboard smash.
Yeah.
Now the ground version, you can hit a guy with that and they'll knock down. But the air version of that is excellent. You can dart halfway across the screen, you kind of slide when you hit the ground. I've found myself wiping out multiple enemies in one blow with that.
It moves really, really fast. He's pretty well protected while he's executing it.
He can actually, he's a monster at generating AP. He can actually drop a boom box and make it. One of the few characters I've seen have that kind of control over their energy level.
The side effect of that, of course, is then he has to protect that space because anyone can come in and pick up those AP balls.
Let's let's talk about those supers, because as we said before, PlayStation All-Stars, it's all about getting those supers and getting kills.
Yeah, so Parappa's level 1 super is a very short-ranged kind of flip kick. It also has some additional functionality in that it can attack players who are kind of up and at an angle. Parappa. It doesn't have the best range, but it is one of the lower supers in terms of cost.
But the level 2 is, I think, one that a lot of people are going to be going for. It's a go-to super. Hops on his skateboard and he basically blitzes through the level, and you have some control over him.
If you can catch opponents sort of all in a corner, Hades I think has a lot of these little sort of nooks and crannies where you can sort of take guys by surprise, and you limit their escape routes very early by sort of moving out to the side, activating the super, and then coming at them while they're all sort of trapped in a corner. Really hard to get out of.
And his level 3 is interesting too. It's basically a screen clearing move. And that's the first one I've seen in PlayStation All-Stars.
There's a very hard kill limit on that super. You're never going to kill more than 3 people with Parappa's level 3 super.
Now, what would you say for a beginner? What's the best strategy starting out first time with Parappa?
The best starting strategy with Parappa is to get familiar with his 1,000 punches and his 1,000 kicks. You'll be using those attacks a lot. Players who like pushing buttons, players who like believing in themselves, all of those, I think, attributes lend themselves really well to being a Parappa player.
PlayStation.
Let's start talking about one of my favorite characters so far, Colonel Radek. Not so great at the close range stuff, but a dominator at a distance.
We knew that Radek in sort of the Killzone universe is known as kind of a close range melee fighter, and we did make sure to retain that element. From the Killzone franchise, it was an opportunity to introduce a very unique playstyle in the PlayStation All-Stars, and that really manifests in his sniper rifle.
Now let's talk about that sniper rifle in a little more detail there, because there's a couple tricks to using it. For instance, I noticed you can buffer it in midair. You can get it going in midair, and the second he lands, bam!
There is a bit of a long startup on the sniper rifle, so it takes a while to get going, and one of the tricks that you'll see a lot of the more advanced Radek players utilize is that you can start executing that move in air, sort of get the wind up as it's occurring as you're falling down, and then by the time you land, you'll get that shot off, and it's a way to mitigate some of that risk of the long wind-up of that attack instead of having to deal with that all while you're on the ground.
Another move I found myself using again and again when I had the opportunity was tapping triangle. He gives like a burst with an assault rifle.
It doesn't generate a ton of AP, it doesn't have a ton of distance, it's pretty good at mid-range, but it's something that players have to pay attention to and deal with, and that also is something that, again, is centered to Radek's style.
Now up close though, he does have a couple strong moves, particularly that hand shotgun he uses.
Yeah.
There's a couple he has a combo that uses that, and it's also really effective in midair.
So his throw utilizes that shotgun really well. He sort of teleports behind an unsuspecting opponent and fires that shotgun behind them and send the opponents flying. And of course, that's all Radek wants to do really, is just get guys to the other side of the screen.
He's got a pair of moves that complement each other perfectly, and they involve grenades.
We actually did something really interesting with Radek in that we gave his grenades 2 different properties. So the more long-distance grenade, this is performed with down triangle, there's a little bit of a bounce on it, and I know a lot of sort of skillful first-person shooter players like to apply the strategy when they use grenades. You try to bounce it off the ground to give it a bit of additional range, and then when you do that, it explodes at a really nice, predictable spot. And so Radek, it has exactly that kind of functionality.
Now, of course, you know, PlayStation All-Stars, it's all about the supers, and Radek's got some of the best I've seen yet, just again and again and again. Each of them more deadly than the one before it.
So you get this target reticle that appears on screen, and if he can overlap that reticle on players, it'll lock on. Anywhere where that character moves, these 3 homing missiles will start flying towards that player.
But let's talk about that level 2.
Yeah.
Very visually spectacular. It's the arc cannon, if I'm not mistaken, from Killzone 2 and Killzone 3.
The best place to use that, or the best situation to use that in, are in spaces with a wide horizontal space. You want to make sure that opponents don't have an easy vertical escape, so there's not a platform immediately above them. And if you can manage to fire it off at distance or even at range, it can be really effective.
And that leads us to the level 3, which is extremely potent. I mean, there's some really devastating level 3s in this game, and I'd argue that Radek is up there with the best of them.
it's a really chaotic moment.
So when it comes to Colonel Radek, what kind of player is going to gravitate to him?
If you're that guy who loves playing first-person shooters, immediately goes for the sniper rifle and sits on the hill and just rains chaos down on everyone else who's playing the game, I think Rad's going to be the character for you.
PlayStation.
Let's talk Sweet Tooth. Yeah, this is the signature character here from Twisted Metal.
Yep.
Long and storied history. What made you want to put him in PlayStation All-Stars?
It made a lot of sense for us to get the clown out of the truck and really play up his personality a lot more than perhaps the truck affords, and to get some of the more essence of what that character is and sort of his brutal, his sensibilities in the game.
What would you say from a beginner strategy? What's a good place to start with Sweet Tooth?
Sweet Tooth is a very straightforward character in terms of his play style. It's really single individual moves. He's really good at controlling space. Most of that centers around his use of his landmine and his shotgun abilities.
Another one that grabbed me was the fire breathing. It takes a little bit of a commitment from the player, but you can hit multiple enemies and you can just carve right through them with this fire breath.
The Molotov is really more of an annoyance move. It's not so much a bread and butter type attack that you're going to be throwing out and hoping to generate gobs and gobs of AP with. Again, it's more of Sweet Tooth's general playstyle of capitalizing on your mistakes.
Sweet Tooth also has a couple of effective area of effect type juggles. There's one where he kind of pops a Molotov cocktail over his head and it sends guys flying up into the air. Let's talk supers. Sweet Tooth's level 1 super, bit of a niche move based on what I've seen.
Dynamite plant, and he sort of kicks you and sends you flying. It's clearly suited towards attacking one person.
Level 2 super with Sweet Tooth is killer. That's the guided nuke. It's right out of the nuke mode in the new Twisted Metal game.
The guided nuke, once it fires off the platform, Sweet Tooth has sort of entire complete control over the direction and trajectory of that missile, and he actually even pulls out a little PlayStation DualShock and controls it around the level.
I mean, the level 3 speaks for itself. I mean, Sweetbot, he's back, and it's a little bit of a nod to how Kratos' level 3 works, but it's different.
It's got the chain gun that allows him essentially full screen access if you're in front of Sweet Tooth and he pops Mecha Tooth and he starts that chain gun attack. Good luck to you.
So to sum it all up, to close the book here on Sweet Tooth, what kind of player is going to gravitate towards Sweet Tooth?
I actually think Sweet Tooth is one of the easiest characters on our roster to play. So maybe if you're just starting out and want a character that you can jump in very, very quickly and have some really success with, I think he'd be a great choice.
PlayStation.
Let's talk Kratos. I think a go-to character for a lot of people playing PlayStation All-Stars for the first time.
Kratos from the God of War series has a very strong offensive style in his game. He's really good at dealing with crowds in front and behind to the sides. He's got those wide arcs. Now we have a 2D perspective, so the way that we sort of recreated the sensation of his sort of can deal with all things at all ranges, we gave him sort of a greater than average sort of range that he's able to affect with his chain. So we don't consider Kratos a short range character. He's more probably accurately described as a mid-range character because those blades of chaos can travel so far, further than the average guy who's just dealing with punches and kicks.
Kratos, I think one of the things I noticed is he's really good at getting in. He's really good at harassing people.
Yeah, once Kratos gets to that mid-range, he does have a really wide arsenal, and the combat grapple has some interesting properties to it, because not only can it be used to getting close to an opponent, but it can also be used to sort of change places and get to where your opponent just was and send your opponent flying.
Luckily for him, he's got some great aerial attacks, and one of my favorite is the Barbarian Hammer.
On the ground, has a long wind-up. It does pretty good damage when it does finally land.
Another thing, he's got a counter. That's not something you see in that much in PlayStation All-Stars. He's unique in that respect. He can do it in midair or on the ground.
Golden Fleece is a little more predictive oriented in PlayStation All-Stars. It's something that you use in anticipation of an oncoming attack when you're really sure that that attack is going to come.
Pretty mobile character too. He's got these Icarus wings. Not only can you use that to push characters up in the air, juggle them, you can use it in midair. As we know, all the characters have a double jump. He's essentially got a triple jump. Let's talk about Kratos' supers, because he's got some really unique ways to score points.
It does have a bit of wind up on it, so it's not something that you want to fire out necessarily when you're in the combat ball, but if you're just outside of the combat ball and you can get those guys distracted, it's a really good move to capitalize.
His level 2 super is much more vertically oriented. One of the few I've seen in PlayStation All-Stars that has this vertical area of effect.
By surprise, when you're 3 platforms underneath them, you fire off this level 2 and you catch them all the way at the top. It's a great super in that situation.
But that level 3, for me, that is worth investing in.
Really hard to get away. You can maybe get away on the first attack. You're not going to get away from that second attack. And the sort of limit on how many kills Kratos can get is really based on how good that Kratos is with leveraging that power.
It's all about evening the odds and getting those points with supers. So with Kratos, when it comes down to Kratos, what kind of character, what kind of fighting game fan do you think is a good fit for Kratos?
Players are going to gravitate towards Kratos, are going to be the ones who like a medium range game, who like a character who has a wide level of functionality, has really cool combos. If you like stringing together combos and looking like you're creating these beautiful sequences of attacks, I think Kratos is going to be the character for you.
PlayStation.
Brings us to Sly Cooper. Radically different in some ways. Doesn't have a block button, doesn't do some of the typical things you might expect, doesn't roll, doesn't have the evade. Tell me about where this character design came from.
Sly Cooper is a guy who sneaks in the shadows, who's very stealthy, and has devastating tricks. Required us to take some risks with our traditional mechanics, but we're having a real fun time doing it.
What's the first thing I should be looking to do with Sly Cooper?
Trying to land that backstab. By far and away his most important offensive tool. It is a completely unique mechanic. It has a base energy that you'll accumulate just by landing this attack, and then there's an additional AP bonus that you get based on how much energy you steal from your player.
But it's interesting too, because he's balanced, he's got some interesting balance moves. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about the fact that he can't block.
Keeping track of Sly Cooper at all times can be difficult. So while he can't completely negate your attacks by blocking, he can sort of be in a situation where you never feel like you have to attack him in the first place by simply being invisible.
Another move I thought was great was the dynamite bucket that he can jump into, sneaking close, and then detonate. That's a great crowd control move. Again, it's not a character you're going to want in the thick of combat, but when you need to, that's a great go-to.
Another really important move for Sly Cooper is the alarm clock. He can quickly stun an opponent and get them caught in sort of the sonic waves.
But what you can do is you can build up to those supers, and that's what it's all about in PlayStation All-Stars. So tell me about that level 1.
Actually, Murray steps in and helps him out. So Murray actually will run in and will just go charging forward. This is a really devastating attack because Sly can perform his supers while invisible.
But Sly Cooper does get involved on his level 2, which is, I think, a fantastic super.
It's one of the few level 2 supers where a character's mobility is actually greatly enhanced. It allows him really to touch any place on the level with his really devastating level 2 super. He's raining down bombs as he's flying around. Those are extremely hard to get away from. They have an explosive blast range on them, so not just the object itself, but also being around those objects is really bad.
It's a really interesting dynamic. He's trying to keep away and trying not to fight too much, trying to stay in the shadows, but then that level 2 comes out and all bets are off. He's coming for you now. But then that leads us to the level 3.
Bentley comes out and has a modified Bunaki com that actually is, shoot to kill. He can capture quite a number of kills with that Bunaki com. This is a super that does ask a little bit more of Sly Cooper in terms of skill and does allow his opponents to deal with the situation a little bit better. But again, if the fates align and he's able to use that super effectively, he can get a lot of kills with it.
So in a nutshell, Sly Cooper, what kind of fighting game player should I be if I want to play as Sly Cooper?
I really like investing a lot in a character who has a high risk but a high reward sort of play style, a character that you can feel really smart with, a character that you can be clever and tricky and frustrate your opponents with. I think Sly's really going to appeal to you.
PlayStation. comes a new challenger, Jack and Daxter.
Locked and loaded, baby.
Here comes a new challenger, Ratchet and Clank.
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Cole McGrath. Here comes a new challenger, Evil Cole McGrath.
You can't stop me. You idiots never learn.
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Heihachi Mishima!
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Toro Inoue!
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Sackboy!
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Spike!
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Dante!
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Noriko!
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Sir Daniel Fortescue!
PlayStation.
Here comes a new challenger, Raiden!
PlayStation